Welcome in, my people. I am Chris at Coach Hayes Hudl as part of the Dog Dispatch. And man, we've got some things to talk about today. I'm glad you're joining me this evening as we talk about the playoffs and the portal. Oh my, we're going to take a deeper look into Gunnar Stockton and what he is going to bring to the table to help assist us as we move forward, trying to take on this new season of 3 games where you lose and you go home. So stick around. I hope to have a good show for you, and we'll talk more about it in depth. Basically, if we're looking at the portal right now, I know a lot of people are really interested in that. For people like me, who is always interested in recruiting and looking at the kids that we possibly could be getting versus not be getting, it seems to me that it's become just sort of a hodgepodge now as they enter into this system with NIL, with all the different things that we've been taking on in college football over the last couple of years. And we've allowed players now to be negotiating almost basically like a contract system, which is not a contract yet. That's something they're going to have to be looking at down the road. But with that being said, what I feel like the NIL era has done to us, and we're looking at the portal right now, which I think is obviously madness. I don't think there should be a portal situation happening right now while teams are still in the playoff hunt, while teams are still playing versus other teams that are just sitting at home and watching it from the sidewalk. There needs to be a common ground to where everybody has equal play to the portal window. Because I think at this time, it really puts us burden. Think about Penn State right now. Their backup quarterback is planning on leaving Penn State. What if, God forbid, their starting quarterback tweaks an ankle, in their game? And you're sitting there against SMU with your third string quarterback, who I couldn't even probably name right now. I mean, you have these distractions that are built upon because when you're trying to obviously win a championship, these little things that you have going on are distractions. And even though we know that those players are going to move on eventually, it's still a distraction to the football team. I really do think, like, for example, with Humphreys leaving, and when he did it before the SEC championship, even though I know our team rallied and did well, won the game, obviously it was a tooth and nail battle there with them with Texas. I still think him deciding to leave prior to that created a little bit of a distraction. I know some of them were like, bye, see you later. But there were some that I think had an issue with the fact of when he did it. The timing was wrong, and that creates sort of a little rift in how the culture of the program feels when you see these guys that just take off. And it tells me, honestly, either you're not playing well enough to do your job, and you're obviously not, you're a cancer in the locker room, or you're either not getting along with people in the locker room. So you take yourself somewhere else. And honestly, I trust Coach Smart and his staff. And if you've got a kid that wants to go into the portal and he's not getting his way, his time, let him go somewhere else. Now, I know there's obviously people out there that fit the mold of they needed to go somewhere else, a.k.a. A.D. Mitchell. He had a child, being in Texas, and it was just a smooth move for him to go back, and he paid tribute to that. If you look at JDJ that went to Kentucky, I still think that fits the same mold of a good portal transfer that fits the benefit of the athlete and the school. But I think a lot of these kids, they're just trying to play free market now. So we are getting the closest thing to reality TV in college football that could possibly be, because to me, it feels like there's just this soap opera of things going on, and it really is disturbing. We look at this and we see on X is where I'm at a lot. And, Hayes Fawcett, man, he is probably trying his best with, with On3 and all the different recruiting resources out there, putting out these edits for these kids who are leaving and going. Are you going? Are you going to, go to this other school? And honestly, to tell you the truth, I trust Coach Smart in what he's doing, even though we don't have a lot of per se, rufflings in the portal right now. That to me is a good thing. That lets me know that the kids who are leaving for the right reasons, and the ones that we do end up getting are going to be position of need. I'm not going to worry about the portal. I can't worry about that's ridiculous right there, putting an edit out there like that. But I sit there and think to myself, how in the world can you survive in today's time if you're not up to date with trying to get the best players on your football team? I think that's the reason why we see what we saw this year in college football. I think you see these kids are evening out the playing field, but unfortunately the ones that you're seeing that are going for a large bag may not necessarily be panning out for that football program. Just because you can fork the money out doesn't mean necessarily you're going to get the best outcome. Look at what Ole Miss has done and is still doing. They're still trying to find the right lock and key for their program. They didn't even make the playoffs this year. Was a good football team, beat Georgia, and obviously, kudos to them for beating Georgia. But I think everybody's mentality was to beat Georgia this year when you had them on the schedule, because of the program's success and their cultured success over the last 4 to 5 years. And you want to basically play your best game when you played UGA. And I think that's the reason why we saw what we saw this year. It is unprecedented what Coach Smart had to deal with this year in this new era of college football, with everything that's happening, for him to take his team. And I know things had to fall the right way. Ole Miss had to lose to Florida. Obviously, the loss from with Alabama losing there at the end as well, it comes down to the fact that helped us put us in the right place. But we won the games we needed to win. And unfortunately, the teams that wanted to be in lost the games that they didn't need to lose. It puts you in a situation where we only have 3 SEC teams in the playoff. And honestly, to me, from an unbiased situation, even though I thought the playoff committee, the college football playoff committee, really did a poor job setting it up to start with as we move through the year, that honestly it was really how it came out in the wash, I think, was the even way to do it. A lot of people are going to be disgruntled against that, but I think honestly it's the best thing you can see on paper for what happens. Are you going to see a team get blown out? More than likely. But this is what it happens. You have to have a sample size so that eventually over time you can look and see, okay, we did it this way this time, which I think was about as even as you could do. Next time we look at some things, because we know strength of schedule was not even thought about in this process. And that's the reason why we saw so much clamoring going on after the 12-team playoff was done, and saying we're just going to schedule more, our out-of-conference schedule is just going to be nothing, so that we can play all these pancake teams and be 12-0. And be able to run and get into the playoffs that way. But that's just not how it works. You've got to win ball games. You've got to establish your dominance. If you want to be the best team in the nation, you got to beat the best teams in the nation. And when we were down and out after our second loss, when we lost to Ole Miss, I really thought, we just got to win out. And we did. We went out and beat Tennessee. We went out and beat Georgia Tech, even though it was just an all-out clash and all-out battle. And we go into Mercedes-Benz and do what we got to do to win the SEC championship. We could easily lost and be sitting there on the outside looking in. But bottom line is, making the championship meant something this year, it seems. All right. And also, too, we won the games that we needed to win. Honestly, the transfer portal right now, to me, is a distraction. It shouldn't be part of it. And honestly, I'm glad that we're not making a ton of noise. But I think, obviously, whoever we do get and whoever leaves, except for a couple of exceptions, I think are for the right reasons. So it's going to be position of need, probably at the wide receiver position. There's a little bit going towards quarterback position as well. But whatever we get, I trust Coach Smart to do what's right. And then what I'll do is worry about who we do have once the transfer portal window closes. So just a little bit on the transfer portal. Like I said, the craziness and the reality TV show that it is right now, there's going to have to be some bindings that are going to be put on it. There's going to have to be a governor of some sort put into place, where these are going to have to start becoming true pen to paper contractual agreements, just like the NFL has, where there's penalty and procedure. If you decide to leave your contract early, there's penalties in your fees, things of that nature. You've got to perform up to certain standards in order to make that money. And, because all these kids, it's hard that you're putting, 7 figures in front of some of these are 8 figures they're putting in front of these kids before they've even played a down at their school. There is just no way in the world that I could sit there and think to myself that I'm going to pay out millions of dollars to a kid as well as he looks in high school and be able to say I'm going to get that kind of those outcomes from him and that performance from him once he gets to college. So, all this we see on X, all these we see on our social media, the events and different things that we look at, honestly, to tell you the truth, it really needs to be looked at almost in sort of a stay off the roller coaster, stay sort of linear with what's going on, let the kids do their thing, let the coaches do their thing, let them worry about it. And we come out on the other side and we look at the outcomes that come from it. But, until they figure out something and put it into place, because the NCAA has wiped their hands of it, colleges across the nation are going to have to start looking at putting contractual agreements with these kids that hold them accountable, first off, to perform at that level if they require that amount of money. And secondly, if they don't perform at that level and don't succeed and get to those levels that we've talked about, and they decide because they're unhappy and get butthurt, because you're still talking about teenage kids when negotiating millions of dollars on their behalf, let them decide on that if they want to go somewhere else and take the penalty for their contractual agreement with the school that they've got, and they don't get the payout. They don't get the money. They give the money back to the school, and you work out deals that way. NFL has those stipulations, and they're pretty high in regards to those rules, and it's eventually going to have to come to that, because right now it's mass chaos in college football, and that's the reason why a lot of true fans who love the game are losing their love and respect for the game, because they feel out of control with what they're seeing and what we're seeing, just like this with all these guys that are panning across my screen right now that you've been watching here for the last few minutes, and be able to sit there and go, is there really any, solidarity? Is there really any, security in a kid that you bring to your school that really loves the brand you play for versus, just going out and playing football? Is there any dedication to that anymore? I'd say there is some. There's some kids that still love the school they go to, and they appreciate the fact that they get to put on the helmet and wear the brand that they have out there. But there are some in it for the wrong reasons. And unfortunately, I think that's what we're beginning to see in this grand scheme of things, is that those kids are not panning out, and it's causing mass chaos in the portal system. Now, I'm going to take you into the playoff scenario here, and I want you to look at, obviously, as we leave into this weekend, we have 4 slated games for this weekend, and I wanted to be able to talk to you a little bit about these 4 games, and looking at the one that probably affects Georgia the most, obviously, is the game coming out of South Bend, and that is Notre Dame and Indiana. And, the one thing that I look at, everybody seems to think it's in South Bend. Notre Dame lost a game to Northern Illinois back in the 3rd game of the season. And, it comes down to the fact of, that kind of got lost in the shuffle because it happened so long ago. Okay. Indiana's playing well, beating a lot of Big Ten teams, sort of the bottom seller teams, and their strength of schedule is not very good. And they finally get put on the plate with Ohio State, and Ohio State was their first big contest, and they, laid an egg in that game. And so, it comes down to me. Notre Dame has a very solid running game. They have a very solid defense. They've got a quarterback that makes good decisions. Not necessarily. I think it took him like 6 games before he threw a touchdown pass. He seemed to be a running quarterback that extended plays with his legs. But because it's in South Bend, I think Indiana's hype is over, unfortunately, because, like I said, it's just not built for what they're about to take on in Notre Dame. I wouldn't be surprised if they give Notre Dame a little bit of a hard time through a half, because it is playoff football. These guys know they're going home if they lose. So, you're going to see probably a solid ball game to begin with, but I think eventually over time, Notre Dame's running game and their solid defensive play is going to wear Indiana down, and we're going to see Notre Dame coming to us in the Sugar Bowl after our first round bye. Down in the bottom left-hand side, you see SMU against Penn State. SMU is kind of in that same boat. I think they had a good run this year. They have a very solid football team. They're scrappy. Behind their quick throws, their quick passing game. They've got a solid running game up front. But, Clemson, took advantage of the big explosives and, really got up ahead. But, what I liked about SMU is they didn't give up. They fought down to the wire and ended up getting beat on a walk-off 54-yard field goal from Clemson. So, I still think that this game, between Penn State and SMU could be something different, because Penn State is that team. It's always sort of the, never the bride, always the bridesmaid mentality. They seem to always find a way when they need to win a big game. And this is probably one of the biggest games they've had, even though they're playing a team down to them in Happy Valley. I still feel like this is going to be a little bit of a struggle for them out of the gate, but I think they're going to do the same thing Notre Dame does. I think eventually over time, they're going to wear SMU down. They're going to get behind their pads and run the football. They're going to be effective in their passing game, and I think they'll eventually come out on top being at home. But SMU, give it to me right now. I think they're going to give Penn State all they want in Happy Valley. I'm going to look at the Clemson-Texas game next. Honestly, to tell you the truth, I think this game could be really close, to tell you the truth. Clemson has got a solid defensive team, all right? And Cade Klubnik at quarterback is doing some great things. I don't think they really need to rely on his feet very much. Just let him extend plays when he needs to extend plays. But, Texas with a stubborn defense, and it really, to me, is going to come down on the play of Quinn Ewers. When you look at Quinn Ewers, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, if we're going to get the Quinn Ewers that we've seen other than when he played Georgia, or are we going to get an inconsistency in him? And, Sark's not too, shy to look at the option of putting in Manning if he sees that Ewers is not getting the job done. Because, again, this is one loss. You're going home. So he's got to do something to spark interest. But I like Texas's defense. Solid running game by Quentin Wisner. I think he's really their best running back, but Jaden Blue does a really good job as well. I think a solid running game. Ewers does a good job in the passing game, and it's just going to eventually wear Clemson down. But I think Clemson's going to give Texas all that they want as they move down. We could end up having a low-scoring ball game, I think, again, very similar to what Georgia and Texas was in the SEC championship. I don't really see this being a high-scoring football game, because you have two solid defenses, and it's really going to come down to who executes better. And if you have some defensive slips with some explosives, that could be the difference of the game. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see a 17-14, 14-10 type game going through the third quarter. So we'll just have to see how things go out. But I do think Texas does pull it out in the end, and it comes down to the fact of who executes. If Ewers comes in and does a really good job of setting up the passing game, getting people involved like Wingo, and obviously the ones that have contributed to their offensive passing attack, and they have a solid run game, which they didn't have against Georgia in the SEC championship. And I think that's the one thing that helped us have a better play against Texas, is we stopped their running game that's been very effective all season. So, but I do think Texas probably ends up pulling it out at the end, but it could be a nail biter, very similar to what they just experienced in the SEC championship against Georgia. Ohio State and Tennessee. Tennessee's headed to the shoe. Ohio State, one of the most explosive, exploited teams all year long. Highest paid personnel on staff. Got Chip Kelly, offensive coordinator. And they've underachieved this year. I think the offensive line play has not been very good, very similar and inconsistent to what Georgia's seen through the year as well. Howard has not been as effective as you'd like to see. And again, the game that they come out and play against Penn State got Ohio State fans excited, but then they lay an egg at home against Michigan. I think Ryan Day is on a massive hot seat with this as well. If Tennessee's able to come in and be effective and beat them at the shoe, I do see possibly a Ryan Day firing. I really do. I think that's going to be sort of the last straw of what they can handle with Ryan Day's tenure at Ohio State. I would be surprised if he's there if Tennessee does win. But the issue with Tennessee, very good offensive, defensive line play, solid running game with Sampson. Nico has got to be more efficient in the passing game. And this is where Josh Heupel has got to be effective with these guys. Defensively, they've got to get the ball out on the perimeter. Ohio State's got a great defense. In fact, their front seven, front eight, when they're in the box, they do a really good job of controlling the run. Got big bodies to take care of the line of scrimmage. So, is it going to be where Nico has time to throw? And if he does have time to throw, be effective and efficient, extend drives, drive Ohio State crazy, keep time of possession, exploit them. And hopefully if you get the explosive like Tennessee likes to do in their offense, If they get those opportunities, the more explosives they have, I think that really causes Ohio State problems because they have shown that they can't put drives together. They're inconsistent in that case. So I really do think, and I know it may be a little SEC bias here, but I want to see an SEC team go up to the shoe in Ohio State. They haven't had this in forever because it's always seemed like Ohio State has played the bottom seller of all the Big Ten teams throughout the year, have always been overrated. Get to the Michigan game, and the Michigan-Ohio State game is always what defines their season. And now what we've got is a different scenario with them. There's been sort of a facelift. And now Ohio State not only losing to Oregon this year, and of course, Oregon is a very good football team, but, that put Oregon on the map. But then to lose to Michigan at home the last game of the season, and then Tennessee comes into the shoe, back-to-back home games, and Tennessee comes out with a win, I begin to think we understand that Ryan Day is probably not the coach of the future for that program. And obviously a very high profile team with a lot of money spent into these players. You think about Caleb Downs coming in. There was a big bag spent in that regards. But, you have Chip Kelly as an offensive coordinator. I think he's an offensive genius. And they just haven't been able to produce. And unfortunately, they're going to ride this wave with Howard, and we'll just have to see what happens as we move forward. But I think Tennessee pulls off the win in the shoe. I think it's going to be a close ball game, but I do think Tennessee comes out. It could be probably like a 7 to 10 point game. I'm thinking something like 31-21 or 28-17, something like that. So that's just a little small preview of the 4 games that we're going to be seeing this weekend. It's exciting because no one has ever seen a 12-team playoff in college football. It kind of has that feeling and mentality of March Madness. I know I'm glad that I'm not sitting at home biting my nails watching a game this weekend. I'm going to enjoy these 4 ball games. I'm really looking forward to seeing who comes out of the Notre Dame and Indiana game. And honestly, whoever comes out of that game, we'll be glad to receive them at the Sugar Bowl in Louisiana in New Orleans. So I do think that's going to be Notre Dame, though, just for, in my honest opinion, it just seems to be that fit. But that's the playoff look, and just wanted to talk to you a little bit more in depth about that as we move forward. Now, what are we going to do once the team that comes to New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl, and we're looking at who we're going to be playing against when we have somebody that is not Carson Beck? I sit there and I think to myself, with Carson Beck's injury, even though, thank goodness, I believe we do not have a tear in his ligament of his elbow, we know that we're going to be riding on Gunnar Stockton. And Gunnar Stockton obviously is there for a reason. I know that what we're going to see differently is a completely different dynamic of Gunnar Stockton to Carson Beck. There's just no doubt about it. What I feel, though, around this situation is that we all felt that Carson Beck embodied the Georgia program. It was sort of like, get on my shoulders, we're going to win based off what I can do. And I think Gunnar is a little bit different. It's almost like now the team needs to embody him and let him take care of the things that he can control and let the team itself take control of a ball game. Gunnar is not going to sling it around like Carson Beck does. The one thing I was, and I'm one of those too that felt I was not a Gunnar Stockton fan to tell you. I think he's a great kid. I think he's a good athlete. I think he can sling the football. But the problem with him was his actual, wind up and throw. He takes too long to release the football. And that's something that he's going to have to get better at. Can he throw the ball downfield? He certainly can. But he has a wind up that takes him almost a second to get the ball gone. So, we definitely know what he can do with his legs. And we're going to have to attribute those things to see how Gunnar going forward can be utilized in the offense. I don't think there's going to be this massive install either where people think, well, we're going to put all this +1 quarterback stuff where we got quarterback counter, quarterback power. We got jet sweep and running the quarterback counter the other way. We've already got those plays in the facet in the cogwheels of our offense. We just never had to play them because Carson Beck's not going to do that. And it's a passing efficient quarterback that's going to hold time of possession. That's going to be very key for us in the ball game. To know that helps a quarter is beyond me. He drops that, the game's over with. But to me, if you look at Gunnar Stockton in his small box that they're going to put him in, that if you add the +1 runs to extend what Trevor Etienne and what Nate Frazier are already doing, make him efficient in the extension of the run game with your quick screen game, jailbreak screens, quick screens, fast screens, to be able to still roll out, intermediate rollout. And then sometimes if you're in a good situation, you're up a couple of touchdowns, maybe, who knows, that you take a solid shot down the field to let him throw the ball vertical. But I don't think that's what we need to do. I think we need to stay in the limits of what he's capable of doing and basically take care of the clock. If we pound the clock and keep time of possession on our side with a good, efficient running game, with a tandem of linemen that are doing a heck of a job, that are getting better as the weeks have progressed, and I think we finally have found our solid 5 across the board now with 2 good running backs. Let the receivers continue to do what they do. Let's get them in good position for intermediate stuff, for boot action, for short intermediate trips, things of that nature, where you're throwing to the outside of the hashes and getting your quarterback outside with his ability to roll out and not only throw the football, but to run if it's all covered up, and to control the clock. Put him in situations that's going to make him successful. That's all you can do. We don't need to rely on the fact of him going out there and being the game breaker that we think he's going to be. I think it's just going to be a different dynamic than what we've been used to seeing. But you know what? He can make a liar of me in a heartbeat. We could go out first play and throw the ball vertically and complete a pass outside. But I'm going to say this. When he ran the football for that first play in the first series of the second half, and we all saw it, when he put a little, FU into the defender as he lowered his head, I think it was for about a 4 or 5 yard gain. You could just see the camaraderie around him and how just sort of the chemistry of that game changed. Do they want to play for him? It sounds like they do. I mean, I sit there and watch just sort of the chemistry of around those guys, being able to talk to him, hearing what Lawson Lucky said to him on the sideline, saying, if you trust yourself as much as I trust you, you're going to be okay. I mean, that's a phenomenal thought process to give your quarterback who's trying to go in for his first production of the season in the SEC championship game. So prepare for a different dynamic. It's exciting for that, but also, too, be prepared for sort of the growing pains that you're probably going to see with that as well. And it's going to be against a very tough contending Notre Dame team probably who has a very good run defense. So, let's see what happens. But I'm excited for what we do because it's one game. We've got a 3-game season now. It's almost like 2 separate seasons we've played. Here we are, the SEC champs, and probably, to me, one of Coach Kirby Smart's best coach seasons. And now we are moving forward 1 game at a time to try to get to the national championship with a quarterback who we had no expectations of just 2 or 3 weeks ago. All right. We had talked about him. I had talked about him. We'd even talked about him possibly going into the portal. But here he is going to lead this team hopefully to a national championship. And who knows? The last time we played Notre Dame at South Bend, which is we're not going to be there. But, that's when right after Jacob Eason got hurt and Jake Fromm comes in, he has nothing to prove other than go out there and just ball. And he did and win a 20-19 hard-fought ball game in South Bend. So, there's a lot of neat factors that we're looking at here. It's exciting to be a fan. It's also going to be nerve-wracking to be a fan. But we got to give him our full support and get behind him. And let's see what the Gunner Stockton show's about. Now, the one thing that's also helping this offense is a good defense. And what I want to do is show you real quick just a small breakdown of why I think defensively we are just showing more consistency than we have. We know what our back end has been struggling with the passing game, but I think the putting in, when you look at who we're using now in Harris, and I'm looking at that situation a little bit more in depth, and obviously the good game that Dalen Everett had. I'm liking what we're getting from our front 7. Warren Brinson and TID and Nazir Stackhouse just doing a phenomenal job, and it's helping our linebacker play improve because we are healthy up front. And what's nice is I'm thinking that Kristen Miller could be ready to go and should be ready to go in this game once we play Kylie Bum New Year's Day, I believe it is, when we play. It seems crazy to think we're not going to play again till then based off where we're at right now. But anyway, just seeing the defensive line improve and showing that improvement has just meant the world to the linebacker play, and obviously getting to the football, causing havoc, and generating more, pressures to the quarterback. All it can do is help out your defensive back play. So what I want to do real quick is show you just a small breakdown that I've done This is not in real time. This is one that I've done previously, but I just wanted to show you real quick how Georgia did a real good job against Texas in defending power. So check it out. I know I've shown this play basically for what Warren Brinson does here, which is a phenomenal job by this gentleman, by the way. But I want you to show, and I want to show you for the first time, that we probably defended power better than I've ever seen it defended by us, because we're playing in space with a Mike and Will that's not being brought on a blitz, and you can actually watch it from what the pre-snap looks like on the dry erase board to how it's run here in this situation. What we're going to get off this is you're going to get guard pulling to kick. This is what I call ghost left power, G and H. This is your H back. This is your G. So ghost, GH, ghost left. A lot of people call this counter Trey, just using H back instead of the tackle. But to me, this is old school power where your guard becomes your fullback. And then you've got the H that's pulling, which is basically like your guard in the old school pro I. And then you run power out of this. This is the way I call it. I know some people will call this counter Trey, but to me, true counter Trey is bringing the guard in the tackle. All right. When you bring the guard in something else, you're just trying to run power out of a different variant of offense. Okay. Now the H is supposed to be wrapping for the play side backer. So what I tell you in this is that if you get a down block, all right, this guy's got to squeeze the down, and he has got to flathead the guard, which Shamlis has done a phenomenal job of this going on 2 years now. If there's somebody who knows how to blow up a guard pull with teams that run gap scheme, all right, he does a hell of a job of that. All right. Now, because of this, you're going to get a down block, and you're going to get Nazir Stackhouse, probably for the first time ever, not only is taking on a down block, but he's getting extension with his hands and not giving up his gap. All right. So what I want to do quickly is I want to show you just those two things first. Okay. Watch this right here as Shamlis blows the guard up. And look at Stackhouse right here holding his position and not letting that tackle or guard actually blow him up and get him down inside and drive him. By him blowing this up, all right, you give him no room. What I would love to see is him flathead the inside eye so that it makes this bounce and everything bounce to the outside here. But the thing that really looks good because of the squeeze by our outside linebacker to blow up the pulling guard and by Stackhouse holding his gap. Now, I want you to watch now the next play. This is just Warren Brinson doing a hell of a job on a down block right here. Watch him swim. All right, he should be swimming the center because your guard's pulling, so the center's got to replace. Watch that technique right there. It's beautiful. All right, now he's got inside track because if they continue to run power, it should hit right in here. All right. So with him being double teamed and holding his gap, that condenses the gap. Him actually missing the center and swimming him and staying low and not being high is absolutely phenomenal. Now, CJ, what I would love for you to do, kid, is I would like for you to get downhill just a little bit quicker to fit in that hole so that what you do is you occupy this H-back that's pulling because you two are on a date. You're supposed to be hitting each other anyway, and you're going to keep your outside shoulder free so that if it is hit correctly, it pulls the running back inside if he gets the football right here, okay? And then, of course, that helps complement your other linebacker who should be fitting where they're at. Now, because of this whole scenario and because we've outplayed them by this position, holding this position, not allowing guys to get up to the linebacker level, now you've got free linebackers running free to the football. So there's your H fit. Now you've made the running back bubble because of the flathead by the guard on the outside linebacker. He's beat his center. Look at Nazir still holding up his position. This running back has nowhere to go. Absolutely beautiful football right here, defending a gap scheme power. And, the only thing that I wish I'd see a little bit better is maybe CJ blowing this shit up right here, making him not like that block. And then we're getting off that tackle that's trying to down block to Jalon. He fit correctly on that fit right there. So I'm really just, from a defensive guy's mindset, when I watch this, it just makes me feel good that our fits are really good right here. So you can see the swim, taking on the double team, getting extension, flatheading the guard, and making him not like himself right now. Mykel holding his ground on the down blocks that are coming back against him. All he can be there for is for what I call CCR, cutback counter reverse. He fits off the down. He fits over the double team to it. And you've got an outside fit, an inside fit, blowing it up here. This guy holding his gap, and this guy making a spectacular move. And we got a hell of a defensive play here, guys. Great job by the defense on this. One thing that Gunner's going to have to do, just as we mentioned a while ago about the ability to run the clock and time of possession being a key deal and keeping the game within his frame of reference, He's going to have to learn at the line of scrimmage to put his offense in good plays. You hear Coach Smart talk about that all the time, and it's something that where he's got to learn at the line of scrimmage where the hats are at and be able to move. What I'm going to show you here in this next clip is where he doesn't make that adjustment at the line of scrimmage. He's got to see that he's outnumbered to the side that they're running the zone to, and he's got to be able to check with me and be able to put the offense in a good play and run the play oppo to what they've got called. All it is, and I'm sure they've got it called with a check with me at the line of scrimmage to run an opposite of whatever they've got called. And in this place specifically, this would have been a good spot where he could have changed it at the line of scrimmage. And I think that's going to be something that he can get better at and efficient at as he starts to read, and hopefully through watching film, be able to see that. So you can put Georgia in good position to run effective plays away from where the hats are at. You know, it's always a game of numbers. And in this case scenario, he's going to learn hopefully to put himself in position moving forward. So check this out. If you're interested in this play more in depth of understanding the true zone out of this, I really want you to take the time to look at this video that I actually made specifically for this one play. I take the time to walk you through the process of understanding hat to hat, understanding sound defensively, understanding where your run blitz is coming from, and how to take your team and put it into a good format right here. So what we're going to do, and I really think this is going to be something that we need to do a lot of with Gunner Stockton and being under center, but I think we need to include the fact that we actually have two guys potentially that can run the jet action right here. Because if we need to oppo this, we need to actually be running this zone this way. He's got to understand that there are more hats to the right side, and I know he's called this blitz into what he's thinking. We're going to be running some type of, pin and pull right here and reversing out, running tall sweep, and we don't actually run this right here. But he's got a good run call into our boundary, which, Coach Bobo likes to run in the boundary. But, this is something that Gunner's got to get better at, where he comes at line of scrimmage, sees that he doesn't like what he's got called here. You hear Coach Smart talking about all the time what Jake Fromm, what Stead, obviously your jet back, Delp's not going to be in any contention to run the jet. It's the reason why having two jet backs here would work, so that you can check out of this and run the zone either way. Now, they obviously run it into the teeth right here of us, but, if you watch our guard play right here, that's what causes the bust. We end up having too much of a conflict here as Jared and Tate step into this guy right here. This guy ends up becoming really Jared's guy, because you got a guy that walks up. He can't combo on that. He's got to take this first guy that shows. And what happens here, they run an ice technique to us. So as they step out, Dylan Fairchild steps, realizes he's got a guy coming all the way across his face to his weak side, and he ends up, because of the ice stunt, he ends up falling down, losing his leverage to this guy. He ends up icing. That guy replaces over the top, makes a hell of a play, just like I showed with Warren Brinson a while ago. But if Gunner wants to help himself out right here, he comes up to the line of scrimmage, he gets up and says, easy, 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 oppo, oppo, oppo. And now all of a sudden what you got out of this is you got jet motion this way, and now you open up, look like you're going to hand on the jet, and we get zone going this way, because we should be able to block this a hell of a lot better going to the left than we are to the right, because right here we have 22 personnel, but 22, all 22 in the screen. So, with this being said, I could definitely see us running something that would be a good fit. Stepping here and blocking, obviously blocking here. These guys are comboing, and they're working and comboing up to here, and you're just sitting inside gap not to let anything run through, and you hand it off downhill, and these guys are screwed because they're basically on the back side of this, and this safety's even feeling on this. But, it's always in the coach's office who has the drive erase marker last. They caught a good run blitz into our offensive call right here, and we run a zone right into the teeth with two guards missing there. All right, so that's going to wrap us up for today. I appreciate you checking in with me. If you've stayed with me this long, I appreciate you watching. It's definitely always a pleasure to be with my groupies out there that like to watch what I do, the breakdowns that I do. If you are watching, please make sure you share, you follow, you hit the like button, you subscribe if you've never seen my channel before. I like to break down video of personal players as well as team X's and O's, and I've been doing this since January. I've really grown the channel. Really appreciate all those people out there that are supporting me going forward. I look forward to linking back up with John Smith at John Tweet Sports with the Dog Dispatch as we move towards the playoff season and into the off season. But you have been I'm Chris, and I'm at Coach Hayes Hudl, and I would love to see you back with me in my next show. So take care, have a good night, God bless, and go Dogs.